here we are again, Nicky, that time of year to talk about your festival squad to represent Seven Barrows. 68 winners at the festival. You've won the UNIBET Champion Hurdle 8 times before, and you've got quite a strong hand in this year's race. Let's first of all talk about Epatante. We haven't seen her since the Christmas Hurdle. How's she been in the interim?
Well, it was the same plan as last year. The only thing that went wrong is she won the Christmas Hurdle by miles last year. She didn't this year. But otherwise, we left it the same. She seems in very good form. That was a blip at Christmas. Some of ours weren't quite right at the time, but to be fair, take nothing away from Silver Streak. He jumped off and went a real good gallop, and she never looked like getting him, to be honest with you. But no, she's sharper than that now. I think she comes in really good order. I probably would have liked. We've always in the past been able to go and have a gallop at Kempton, where Barney's accommodated us, but under the sort of COVID rules at the moment, racecourses aren't allowed to do that. So we're having to sort of prepare our own way. Well, that was our own way, but it was something we always did just a fortnight before, let them have a little spin round there on the all-weather. So that's not possible. But I mean, that doesn't matter. We can overcome that sort of issue. She's in good form. She seems well. She'll have a school. She's got a couple of bits of work to do, or one really. I think it's a more competitive race. I've no doubt about it. Like a lot of the horses we'll talk about, that was certainly, what we were seeing in Ireland at the Dublin Racing Festival was impressive, and it made us realise we're going to have to be right on the button here because there's a lot of opposition out there. The Irish have got a little filly too. I think it's going to be interesting. I didn't think she looked over big, and nor is Epatante, so it might be a question of two little girls, really. It'd be interesting to see how they get on together, let alone all the others.
If we just go back to that Christmas Hurdle, I mean, did anything come to light for that sort of lacklustre performance?
Well, yeah, one doesn't like to take away from the winner, but I can't see that that was her absolute running. No, it wasn't. I can't believe she just wasn't travelling down the back straight. She was never going to get there, and that's very unlike her. I mean, in the Fighting Fifth, she'd been so good. Unfortunately, Silver Streak himself had been carried out of that race by that time. It looked a good performance, beating So Royal. She was so impressive. As long as we're back like that, then I think we're in, and I think she is. We've got as good a chance as any. But as I say, I think it is more competitive. Honeysuckle's one of many. But as I say, it could be between the two girls.
We've just seen her on the gallops this morning. I mean, she looks like a mare who seems to really enjoy her work. She's struck up a great association with Sophie Candy. Is she quite an easy mare to train on the whole?
She is. Yeah, she's enthusiastic, but it's good. She switches off well. She can be a bit keen up the all-weather, but I mean, again, when she works, you just shut her off behind two horses and she'll relax and pick up when you want her to. Yeah, she's pretty good.
Let's talk about the runners in the handicaps. The Coral Cup, you could be quite well represented. Now, Buzz is a horse who's got some real high-class form, and we saw him run last time at Newbury. That was a fair effort, I would have thought.
I think he ran a very good race, but there were two things that came out of it that were blatantly obvious. He either needs very soft ground, which he loves, or he wants to go further. And if it's good ground, he definitely wants 2.5. His previous runs had all been in very, very soft ground, and he loves it. So 2 miles was fine. The front of the race will fall apart, and then he can come past, horses that are not finishing, and that's what he really likes to do. And of course, if you're getting very slow ground, that's what happens. At Newbury, the word good to soft, the word good came into the going description with like good to soft in places or good to soft all over. And as soon as they say that, they're off and gone. The whole race goes 10 miles an hour quicker. And he was off the bridle for 90% of it, but finished very strongly. And that's where I think 2.5 will suit him well. Or if it comes up soft, well, he'll love that too, so he'll get home.
And he's off a mark of 152. A horse who's rated just £7 lower, but did actually get put at £12 for his Kempton win, was MONTE, CRISTO. He's 14-1 with UNIBET to win the race. Would you feel they're fair odds for him?
I think so. I think that was a good performance. Lovely horse, and I thought he was very good at Kempton. That was impressive, and that certainly booked his ticket. He looks in great shape, and 2.5 is his trip, and good ground would help.
CRAIGNEICHE, very impressive at Ascot last time. Again, another horse that's got to step up and prove he's up to this sort of level. But are you confident that he is up to that standard?
Well, like all these horses you mentioned, they've come out and won their last races at Ascot's and in very good races, and they've got clobbered. Going up £11 to get yourself ready for the Coral, that doesn't really sound very sensible to me. But there you go. The horse was good. He won by far too far, and he got what he was probably entitled to. I think we sort of all knew it was going to be a double-digit figure. So it'll be tough for him, but he looked very good then. He's all about chasing for next year. So I think we just have to, have some fun with him now, and then he can go and jump fences next season.
I remember speaking to you for the UNIBET blog about CRAIGNEICHE in that race, and you were confident of a good run. But how much did he surprise you as to how easily he won it?
He surprised me in that I thought he was always doing too much through the race. He was very enthusiastic. He was not free, but he was just. You felt he was over racing a bit. He was thoroughly enjoying his jumping. It's only his third hurdle race of his life, and he was doing everything like a real old pro that really wanted to go, and it was a very solid performance indeed. And then thinking, goodness, you must run out of petrol soon the way you're overdoing this. And he wasn't. He kept on. Well, the further he went, the further he won.
A horse who's been mixing it over hurdles and fences is Birchdale. You switched him back to timber for this race. He's off 145. How well treated do you think he is?
Well, it depends. I think he's badly treated on what he's actually achieved on the racecourse. We have been over fences with him, not with a huge amount of success. I don't know why he hasn't been jumping. He does jump well, but he's had some silly... we've tried to keep it simple for him, but it doesn't sort of work as just like it is. He fell. We took him up north one day for an easy race, and he just fell over. I won't say he hasn't done it here too. And he's a very talented horse. And you're thinking, well, the only place he's going to go novice chasing, he's going to have to go around the smaller tracks and try and get his act together. In the meantime, you've got a very good horse. Well, you might as well come into a race like this, where I think he's competitive. I mean, his rating is nearly what his homework is, not what he's actually achieved on the racecourse. But I don't know. The handicapper hasn't been watching him working. I know that. At least I haven't seen him up there yet.
If we spin through them all, Buzz off 152, Monte Cristo 145, CRAIGNEICHE 139, Birchdale 145. Those group of horses, which one do you feel just could have that little bit more improvement?
Well, I don't know. Off those ratings, they're pretty, they are very, very exposed horses. And for these sort of races, I mean, Dame de Company won it off 142, I think, last year. And there's going to be a lot of unexposed horses. Trainers that have been rather more subtle about their approach to this race than Henderson has been.
But if you could take just one in the race, you're only allowed to run
Brett,
one.
That's why I'm running 4.
Come on, Nick, you know what we're trying to do.
I don't know. I mean, if the real Birchdale steps up, what he shows us at home, he could be. I think he was 4th in it last year, wasn't he? So he is well capable of it. CRAIGNEICHE is going to be a very good horse. It's very open.
So Birchdale...
I've actually got 14 in here. If I ran all 14, it would only allow room for 10 others.
So there we are, 25-1 Birchdale. That's Nicky's tip of his runners in the Coral Cup. Let's talk about Dame de Compagnie. She's switching back to hurdles to contest the mare's hurdle. How easy a decision was it to switch back to timber?
Well, unfortunately, she went to air for her debut over fences, She won, admittedly, a 2-horse race. I thought she jumped great. It wasn't a bad performance at all. We were just stuck for time a little bit and wanted to go to Sandown for the Grade 1 City Isles. Unfortunately, that was horrible ground. She wasn't really travelling in it. I suspect she probably didn't have quite enough experience for it either. Actually, a horse fell in front of her and she just went straight into the back of it. So that was the end of that. She couldn't go novice chasing. I mean, we were thinking about the mare's chase. JP actually, I think, has the favourite, doesn't he, anyway? So we thought that, you know, the one, she couldn't go into that on the back of, well, it wasn't a 4, but we'd had to have run again. It seemed that, you know, she's a very good hurdler in her own right. 2.5 is her trip. Worth having a look at this.
And you've got Floressa in the race as well?
I like her. Well, I've always liked her, and she's been a lot of fun. We've always thought, at least I say we have, at the beginning of the season, I mean, Minty and Richard Aston and a team of them, they're very enthusiastic, but they were up for the Jerry Fielden to start with. I said, but she wants 2.5. We're going to run in the Jerry Fielden, and then we're going to run in this, and then we're going to run in that. I said, but she wants 2.5. We're still going 2-2-2. And of course, she wins the Jerry Fielden. Well, I've had it then. I mean, I've got no say. But eventually, we are now coming into her, what I think is her right trip. If it is the right ground over the right trip, I think it should be interesting.
And Verdana Blue?
I don't know which way she'll go at the moment. It's hard to say. I think looking back at her performances on the flat last summer, it would start to tell you that she isn't what she used to be, which is a genuine 2-miler on really fast ground. And if you look at her run in the Ebor, where she was a very fast finishing 3rd in very soft ground, for flat racing purposes anyway, she's changing her sort of whole concept from a sort of champion hurdle horse into a mare that might well be getting 2.5 and might be coping with soft ground much better than she used to. So this would probably be more likely than the champion hurdle.
Let's talk a bit about ALLART, who was very, very impressive at Ascot on Chase debut. Didn't quite go according to plan at Haydock, which I should imagine has given you a bit of a quandary now as to where you go with him.
Well, the quandary was actually what came back from Haydock. That was just bad luck. I think he jumped beautifully for the first part of the race. He fell down the back straight. He had a fair old fall, as Nicky said, but he could see the hole in the ground that he'd just gone into a hole. And it really just tripped him up. He jumped the fence perfectly well. Just came down a bit steep and he never got out of the ground and consequently went over. He was sore in front, his shoulders, his back, everything. And he's only just come right in time. You certainly wouldn't want to go novice chasing at Cheltenham on the back of that fall. Now, he is in the handicap hurdle, as much as he's a very good horse. We've only just got him back into the moving right. Everybody's been working with him, so much so that when he did sort of finally come right last week, we said, well, I don't know who's mended him, but somebody has, because we're now back in good shape. You know, whether we get there in time, I don't know. Whether we might keep him for something like, you know, if you went back to Aintree, you could go back novice chasing again. Or Ayr might suit him well, because Ronnie likes, well, hopefully we might all be together again by the time of Ayr, and I gather we're going to be at Aintree. So, you know, there's quite a few owners actually thinking that they'd rather wait for Aintree, where they can come and see their horses run, rather than go to Cheltenham where they can't. And I think you'll find this will happen across the board now.
And then the Champagne courts will be popping if Champagne Platinum wins the Pertemps.
Well, again, he's been chasing for a bit of his life. He did a lot of schooling with Champ last year. He was actually very good at it, but somehow he sort of lost that. We've had to revert to hurdles, but his last 2 runs have been good, and we stepped him up to 3 miles the other day for a qualifier at Haydock in some pretty mucky old ground. To be fair, I'd taken him out the week before because the ground was so horrible, but then suddenly realised I've got to do it now because I need to try and get him qualified. And he ran a very good race. We have used cheap pieces in the past. We took them off there, I'm inclined to put them back on again, I would think, for this. But I'd like to think he'd be competitive, yeah.
PIPESMOKER, a real smart horse.
I think he is, and I hope he will be. We were sort of minding him a bit last year, and he got to the point where we didn't want to lose our novice at the back end and ran him in some pretty high-class races where he put up very, very respectable performances. So he was a very highly rated maiden at the beginning of this season. Unfortunately, literally days before he was due to open the season at Cheltenham, he got a lameness that it took us a long time to sort out. We got him back for a run the other day. He ran very well for his first run of the season in a good race, and he did. He ran very well, and that would bring him on enormously. Whether we're getting a bit too close for it, I'm not sure, but you know, one day he's going to be a tip-top horse, and I would think that could. I mean, if he's still a maiden at the end of this season, he's going to be doing the same thing again next. But I'd like to think he'd be chasing next year, so that, you know, he ought to be winning races. Now, I mean, he is up to this standard, and his experience was all last season, so he doesn't lack it. He's tried and tested in top-class company, although he's only had one run this year. But he is a good horse, yes.
And you've got Mill Green in the Martin Pipe Conditional Jockeys race, reverting back to hurdles.
Well, he ran very well in it last year, and I know they'd like to go there. So he's had one run over fences, which is probably what he ought to be concentrating on, and he'd probably do that through the spring. But you know, it's always fun to come back and have a. He did run very well in this last year, and so as I say, they'd like to run.
Get up to £40 money back as a bonus if your first racing bet loses. UNIBET. You're on.